I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, and that is the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our lives, from our individual relationships to our family relations, to our community relations, to our business affairs, to our politics, our international affairs. Every aspect of our lives is heavily influenced by the character issue. And I write about, blog about the impact of the character crisis and the reasons for it in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller in over 20 foreign languages, and Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, the go-to book for understanding all of the disturbed character types that you're likely to encounter in your daily life, and how to deal with them, how to really understand them, understand what makes them tick, how to deal with them from a more empowered perspective, and especially what to look for in the way of getting the proper help if you're seeking professional help dealing with the problem. And then my only book, written for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, about how genuine faith can truly save and help elevate a person to a much different life. And then my book with Dr. Kathy Armistead, the survival guide for those trying to navigate their way through this character disordered world of ours. How did we end up here, surviving and thriving in a character disordered world? So my 4 books and my blog at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com, either URL will take you to the same place. I write about the phenomenon of our time and the reasons for it, the reasons for this character crisis that we face, and what we need to do about it. We need to make character matter again. When it does, things will turn around. And the theme song that plays at the beginning and the end of this program has a message. And that is that freedom and character are completely interdependent. That What makes it all work, or what has made it all work, and what has made America great in the past, is when decent people of integrity are left alone, are not micromanaged by their government, they're not oppressed by their government. When decent, morally well-centered individuals of good character are left to their own devices, they will innovate, they will prosper, and they will create opportunities for others. And they make the very survival of freedom possible, because it's only when people behave badly, when their character is flawed, when they don't have a well-internalized moral compass, and they create problems. It's only then, when governments are invited to try and control, try and regulate the mess that can occur through rules and regulations and laws and restrictions on freedom, that quite frankly only the conscientious among us bother to obey anyway. So everyone's freedom suffers when we have too much character disturbance. So I've been on a mission of sorts for the better part of the last 35 years of my professional career to bring the message to others about the importance of character in our world. And it couldn't be any more important than it is today. The world's never been so close to major problems breaking out all over the place. It's not like they haven't already. Actually, the news is pretty silent on the atrocities occurring every single day in various corners of the world. We are, as a species, we are at heart animals, wired in a certain way. And it takes a lot of character building to turn us into the kind of people that can get along with one another, cooperate with one another, do good by each other. It takes a lot in the way of pro-socialization. It takes hour after hour, year after year, for many, many, many years, of the proper kind of nurturing and upbringing to make of ourselves the decent kinds of characters that we're capable of being. No other creatures on the planet take as long to socialize as human beings do. We've got this incredible brain. And unfortunately, we've used it for not so good purpose many times. And as anybody who's been in a relationship with a disturbed or impaired character knows, life can be a living hell. We have to make character matter again, and that's been my crusade. And I hope it will be yours too. And if you have a situation that you'd like to ask about, a story you'd like to share that you think would interest our audience, maybe you just have a question you'd like to ask. Maybe you've read one of the articles posted on my blog or read something in one of the books. If you want to give us a call, the number to call is 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. I'll be happy to take your call. It is September the 17th, 2017, and we are live tonight. And so I can take your calls at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. Well, I'm going to talk about something really special tonight because I do believe that the world is at the precipice, at the very edge of a new era. Our growing pains have been very tough, and there's a lot more hardship, I'm afraid, lying ahead. There are some megalomaniacs out there of all kinds, leading unholy movements. We risk a great deal of pain and hardship. Atrocities are being committed everywhere. Really, we've been on the brink of worldwide war for some time now. So the next several years are not going to be easy ones, but I do think we're on the brink of a revolution of thought, a revolution of mind, a revolution in attitude. We have to rise to a new level, or we're not going to make it. There's too much at stake. And how I think that revolution is going to be expressed, where I think we are necessarily going, is that we have to have a serious and honest discussion about what we truly believe. Now, I'm choosing my words really carefully there. You see, there's been a revolution in psychology. It began about 25 years ago. Those in the mental health sciences field call it the cognitive behavioral revolution. We realized that there was this inextricable relationship between the ways we sincerely believe, the beliefs we sincerely hold, not the things that we say we believe, the things we really, truly believe in the depths of our souls, the ways we think about things, our mindset, as it were. There is a relationship between that and our behavior. For example, let's just take an abusive relationship as an example. If someone truly believes, if a man, for example, in a relationship with a woman, truly believes in his heart of hearts that a woman is a naturally subservient, or ought to be a naturally subservient individual in a relationship or relationship partner, and that they are truly inferior. If a person actually holds these kinds of beliefs, is it any surprise? Is it any surprise that they would feel entitled to act abusively if they did not have their way all the time, or be afforded the dominant position in a relationship? You see, the way we look at things, the beliefs that we truly hold, they influence heavily our behavior. If we, for example, truly believe that individuals who belong to a certain class or a certain race are in some ways inferior. Is it any wonder that bigotry develops as a result? And that bigoted behavior, demeaning behavior, disrespectful behavior follows. These things are related. And I'm here to say something rather provocative. And that is that even though we believe in freedom of expression and freedom of thought, not all ways of thinking are equal. Because the way we think about things, the beliefs that we hold, will influence how we act toward one another. And there are certain mindsets that are inherently toxic and destructive. There are certain ways of thinking and believing that inherently pit us against one another. And that's the conversation that we must have eventually. We're not quite ready for it yet because we don't have the skills to respectfully confront one another. We're still savages. We don't like to listen. We don't like to have honest conversations, mutually respectful conversations. But we must get to a point, and I believe we're at the precipice because it's long overdue, where we have to challenge one another's belief systems. And I don't mean our professed belief systems. People profess all kinds of things all the time. If you want to know how people really believe, what they really hold in their heart, the values they really hold, the convictions they are truly dedicated to, you want to know that? Look at their behavior. It says it all. It says it all. I mention this all the time at workshops. I mention how, especially in abusive relationships, that the aggrieved relationship partners are always looking for understanding. They're always looking for explanations as to why, thinking if they could just understand what the underlying motives or maybe the underlying fears or insecurities of the person who is treating them badly, if they could just understand this, they could somehow make things better. As opposed to judging behavior on its own merits and what that behavior must reflect about certain toxic mindsets, certain toxic attitudes, certain toxic beliefs that have to go. That's the next discussion that we have to have. It's the discussion that unfortunately I have to have all the time these days with the clients who I rightfully call character impaired. Folks whose behavior is out of control because they're not developed enough in their own moral character to adequately self-manage their feelings and their actions. They don't have the level of conscience development, and they don't have the level of self-regulation skill that comes along with developing character. And unfortunately, in our day and time, that's largely because many of the institutions that fostered character development have decayed or eroded or have collapsed. Marriage being one of the prime ones. We only have to look at the statistics. You see, there's this interdependent relationship between the erosion of character building institutions and the character crisis that we face. As more and more character impaired individuals populate the culture, the more those folks tend to poo-poo, disregard, and to erode the very institutions that have traditionally both fostered and sustained character development. And of course, as those institutions decay, erode, or fall apart, then it's harder for individuals growing up in a culture to form decent character. There's this interdependent relationship. And that's going to have to turn around. And how it has to turn around is one heart at a time. And that's what I've made my life's work. That's why I'm on the radio tonight, just like every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Character Matters. And if you have a story you'd like to share, one that you think will be instructive, maybe you just have a question you want to ask. Maybe you're in a relationship now where things aren't working. Maybe you're in a relationship with a character-impaired personality and you don't really know what to do. In any case, give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. And I'll be happy to take your call. We are live this evening, once again, September 17th, 2017. And I can take your calls at 501-258-8326. Well, this discussion that we have to have, this honest discussion that we have to have about our belief systems, not just our personal ways of thinking, but our formal belief systems. That's right, I'm daring to say it. Because we train people to think in certain ways. And while there are things of value in all of the major systems of belief, because they were shaped and developed by we flawed human beings, there are weaknesses in these systems too, these major systems of belief. There are even, unfortunately, some really dangerous aspects to some of the belief systems, to some aspects of them. And we have to have an honest and serious discussion. We have to be able to challenge one another respectfully on the ways that we sincerely think about things, the attitudes that we hold. This country of ours, in particular, is at the crossroads. We've become so polarized. We've become so polarized, especially in our politics. That the ability to have an honest discussion about anything has become more difficult than ever. But the necessity for having that honest discussion couldn't possibly be greater. It couldn't possibly be greater. In recent weeks, from time to time, I've talked about a touchy subject for many. I've talked about our current president, who unfortunately I've been misquoted in some major news outlets with regard to my sentiments. Many of the things that I actually have said, not that I was reported to have said erroneously, but many of the things that I actually have said have been borne out in recent weeks. One of the things I said earlier on one of the programs, and that I've actually written about, and that I talk about in the workshops that I do around the country. One of the things I mentioned is that when an individual has two primary agendas in life, number one, to be looked upon adoringly and therefore to be valued or liked or revered, if that's one of the agendas, and the other agenda is to win at all costs, to win at all costs, whatever the cost, regardless the cost. If that's a person's two prime motivators in life, then actually that individual in our culture can accomplish some pretty great things because they'll reinvent themselves. They'll do whatever it takes, basically, to look as good as they can and to win. Now, does that necessarily mean that the person is of good character? No. So there's always a price that gets paid for that. There's always a price. We're witnessing that play out in front of us in a dramatic way. We're being taught some lessons. They're going to be hard lessons, to be sure. Hopefully they will be instructive to us. Hopefully, if we don't learn anything at all besides this one thing, it will be of immense value. Hopefully, we will at least learn how much character really does matter. Perhaps we will learn. Look, if character did not matter, then it's inconceivable that we would be at the point that we are in relations, world relations, with the rogue state of North Korea. The character of one person the character of one person has such a profound influence on the actions of this country and has a lot of the world on edge right now. You don't have to look very far to find evidence in today's world of just how important character is. Think back a couple of generations ago. To the run-up to World War II, and how one individual, he wasn't mad, as some suggest, Adolf Hitler, he wasn't mad, he wasn't insane. He had one of those archetypal sociopathic, psychopathic characters. A fantastically skilled demagogue. And look what that one twisted mind with those twisted beliefs that he harbored did. And just think of how the world suffered. You want to tell me that character doesn't matter? That it doesn't matter more than anything? It matters. It matters more than anything. And we are in a character crisis. We have been for several years. Our relations, our interpersonal relations, tend to be shallow, exploitative, sometimes even abusive. And therefore, our marriages don't last. And therefore, our children don't receive the kind of stable, they don't receive either the stability, the necessary bonding experience, or the necessary character training and guidance to themselves enter the world with the kind of integrity they need to make this all work well. And that's been happening for many years now. And so we find ourselves in a true crisis of character, and it affects everything. Everything. You know, I mention this at every workshop that I do. I can remember a time. I'm just going to use the world of professional sports as an example. Because there was a time, believe it or not, that even in the professional money-making world, you know, most people can't remember when ball players didn't make that much money. There was a time. And there was even a time when the owners didn't make that much money. There was a time when it was actually even affordable to go to a game for the average person. And there was a time when sport itself was regarded as a character building institution, at least in large measure. Not solely, but at least in large measure. And so, accordingly, there was a time when you could have all the talent in the world, immense talent, talent that would enable a team perhaps to win like crazy, pack the stands, and yet you couldn't get on that team because there was a chance, because of your deficiencies of character, that you might bring disgrace or dishonor to the team. And so therefore, you weren't going to get on the team. You weren't going to be hired on. The team would give you a pass. There was a time that character mattered that much, and it wasn't that long ago. Times have changed, attitudes have changed, ways of thinking about things have changed, values have changed. Now, it's all about the talent, it's all about the money, it's all about what you can do. And we're paying the price, just like everything else. We have to look at our value system, what it really is, what we really hold dear. Not what we say, but what we really hold dear. In the pit of our hearts, in the depths of our heart. And we need to have a very, very serious conversation about our major systems of belief. What we believe really does matter. What we truly believe, not what we say we believe, but what we truly hold in the depths of our hearts, the attitudes, the sentiments that we have, that we bear. They influence how we conduct ourselves. And right now, unfortunately, there's too much behaving badly. There's just too much behaving badly. I mentioned earlier that it wasn't that long ago that character mattered so much to an institution like a professional sports team that if there was a chance that a really talented individual might disgrace the team with their conduct, they were not invited to play. Or if given a chance, they were quick to be thrown out should they bring disgrace. And I mentioned how those days have passed us by. I'll give you another example of something that's truly different. And how character factors into it. It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago at all that there wasn't such a relationship between economic poverty, material poverty, and other forms of underprivileged status. There wasn't such a strong relationship between that and criminal activity. It's no crime. It's no crime to lack means. And before the economic boom that followed the end of the Second World War, a lot of folks had it very, very rough. But we didn't have as high a percentage of our population incarcerated. We have the highest percentage of our population in some way incarcerated or restrained, freedom curtailed, than any other free society on the planet. And even though there is some truth to the notion that some folks are in the prisons and jails of our country who probably shouldn't be there because they actually belong in treatment centers or in some other venue of help. Even though that's true, the other truth is there are many, many, many other individuals out there behaving very badly and barely functioning within the system and committing all kinds of atrocities who easily could be behind bars but aren't. We could have even more folks than we presently do. And by a lot. Jails are full. There's no room. Courts are backed up like you wouldn't believe. Deals are cut all the time. It could be even worse than it is. And what does that say about us and what we've become? What does that say about us? And poverty itself is not the cause. It's not. I can remember a time when in the poorest of neighborhoods, it wasn't unsafe for children to play. It wasn't potentially lethal for people to have disputes. They had internal controls to hold them back. And it wasn't that we didn't have people who had no controls. It wasn't that we didn't have people who did bad things, truly horrendous things to other people. We have always had those people. But so many? Such a high percentage? This is relatively new. This is a manifestation of the character crisis that has faced us for so long. And it's not just the breakdown of the traditional family. It's not just that. That's too simple an explanation. There are a lot of ways to provide people with a positive, supportive environment. I really applaud really applaud those individuals of all persuasions who take the job of parenting very seriously. Single parents, partners of various types, who understand what it takes to bond with and nurture a child and help them become a responsible adult human being. There are many ways to accomplish that. And there are some essential values that are necessary to do that. So it's not just the breakdown of the traditional family. That's part of it. It's the fact that relationships in general are not of the integrity that they could be, because the persons in the relationships are not of the integrity that they need to be. The relationship will take on the character of the characters who make up the relationship. And when you bring certain dysfunctional attitudes and beliefs into a relationship, toxic behaviors will result. It's just that simple. Anybody that's been in a toxic relationship knows this. That at the end of the day, it's always about character. People tell me constantly how they wish they would have assessed on the front end a little better the character of the relationship partner, or how they wished they would have paid attention to their gut, because they actually did have some concerns and they actually did see warning signs, and they succumbed to the delusion that with enough love and patience and dedication that things would work out. Only to find out that because the person never grew or changed in character, or maybe even became worse, that the situation was impossible. Then unfortunately, there are all too many situations today where relationships fall apart because people were not that committed from the start and didn't give it much of a shot. And there really wasn't all that much serious character disturbance, other than just basically a sense of entitlement and not willing to work at it enough. So we have to face facts. And that is that character does matter, after all. Now, some folks are going to disagree with me on the political scene right now. But if we don't make character important again, and we don't make it matter, we're going to be in some really, really serious, deep trouble. And I'm not pointing the finger on any one side or the other. This last election, I had problems with both major candidates, the two prime candidates. I had to ask myself the question. I had to ask myself this question about both major candidates. On the one hand, I was asking myself, how do I endorse a person that became half a billionaire operating a charity? I mean, on its face, you know how much corruption has to be there. Just on its face. You don't make nearly $500 million running a charity, a true charity. And you know, that's probably not going to stand, that foundation. Because all those contributors, they had it in their mind that there was going to be influence that they were going to be able to have. They were counting on that. It didn't quite work out. So probably the coffers, you first of all, you're not going to see as much charitable donation out of that foundation. I can guarantee you that. And you're also not going to see the contributions pouring in like they have in the past. It's just not going to happen. So that on the one side of the political spectrum, I had that question to ask myself, and on the other hand, I was saying, how do you put a megalomaniac into power? Someone who really wasn't very smart, who didn't really even understand many of the issues, knew how to demagogue, knew how to talk to people who felt disenfranchised, knew all the right things to say, knew all the kinds of promises to make, because there were hundreds of thousands, millions of individuals out there who felt like nobody was listening. All you had to do is convince them that you would pay attention to them for a change, do something for them, give them a voice again. So the choice before me was, how do you endorse either one of two truly seriously flawed, impaired characters? Oh, what a choice. And it seems to get worse every election cycle. Now, I did think, actually, that there were some individuals of integrity in the race. Unfortunately, one of them wasn't even on the ballot in all the states. The other didn't have a chance because, frankly, among the powers that be, within the system, there was a lot of rigging going on, stacking the deck against that person, and they really didn't have a chance. You know, I've written an article, posted it just this past Friday on my manipulative-people.com blog. It's the beginning of a series on culture and character, about the interdependence here. I encourage you to go read it. That's at manipulative-people.com or drgeorgesimon.com. It's just the beginning, series of articles, a discussion on the relationship between aspects of our culture. Oh, I see we have a call coming in. I'm going to go ahead and take this. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Hello. I've read your 4 books, and I'm rereading each one of them now, and I'm in a relationship with somebody that, interestingly enough, where you're talking about, in one case, you can see the person that's neurotic as causing problems for themselves, and the person that tends to be have character issues causes problems for somebody else.
Yes.
And this person does both. I mean, there was one day when she'll be just really neurotic and causing massive problems for herself, probably saying, don't think like that, you're just torturing yourself. And on other days it's directed to me or somebody around her.
Mm. So she's somewhere on the spectrum that I talk about of character disturbance, where there's some neurosis, but also some character impairment.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the more common thing. It's rare that somebody lies at one extreme or the other of the spectrum, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a concept that only I address in my books. And which books have you read?
All four of them.
All four? My goodness.
Yeah.
You're the one.
I'm the one.
Well, I appreciate it. Which one was your favorite?
There are things about each one of them that I liked a lot, and I'm going through each one of them again right now, just to solidify some of the things that I've learned there, because it's been revolutionary. I'd read a book not too long ago about it's actually called the Human Magnet Syndrome, and talking about how the narcissist will automatically pair up with the codependent, and then when they meet, it's just a magnet.
Yeah.
And the problem is there was no hope for the narcissist. It was basically, if you're in a relationship like this, get out of it. Mm-hmm. But you have a much better perspective on it, where there's the spectrum, and it makes a lot of sense, because you can't have somebody that's beyond repair within a relationship, but right. Most people I don't think are, if they're willing to look at it and deal with it, and that's what my wife and I are doing right now. And
good for you. Good for you.
Good project. What's the word I'm looking for? We're making progress. There we go. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, I'm so glad, and I certainly hope my books help you in that regard.
I'm perplexed with the thing of one day it'll be very neurotic, just causing massive problems for herself.
Right.
And other days it'll be the impairment of causing problems for everybody around her. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
I guess you deal with it as it happens in the moment, as you talk about, with the art of confrontation.
Right. Well, we need to talk more about that sometime. Hopefully you'll call back in sometime, or hopefully you'll contact me through the blog and we can have a discussion, or maybe even a consultation. But we're getting close to the last minute of the hour here, so we're going to have to cut this call short. But I really appreciate your call, not just because of all the kind things you said, but because of the issues you raised. So think about calling in again or contact me through the blog, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, what a nice call. And that spectrum is a vast spectrum of character disturbance. And not all cases are so hopeless. I know that there are a lot of authors out there that like to shock folks and say salacious things that sell books. That's much more common problem. And we'll talk about next week, another edition of Character. Another edition of Character.
Amen.